From the Middle Tennessee Association of Realtors, you're listening to Tenets in Common, a podcast sharing stories, motivation, and insight into the real estate industry.
All right, I'm Steve McDonald.
Christopher Wilson.
And we're here with Mark Crocker, and he's our first on-live guest. So, I don't know, how did you get so lucky, Mark?
You know, I've never been a lucky person, but Steve, I guess just knowing you kind of drew me into this, and here I am, glad to do my part.
It's like a rose between two thorns.
That's actually the best analogy. That is perfect. So I love it.
So Mark and I, a little history, Mark and I got to work with one another. I was at the Real Estate Commission, and Mark was at the Accountancy Board, and we've known each other for quite some time, and it's glad that our paths have crossed again, and we're going to tap into you as our vessel of knowledge.
Sure.
Because it's tax season in Tennessee.
Oh boy,
yeah.
Everybody's favorite time.
So what do you think, Chris? Are you ready for your taxes?
I file extensions. Tax season. That's funny thing is with tax season, and realtors of course are very in tune with this, because self-employed, 1099s, all that fun stuff. But this episode will be very relevant for everyone. In all honesty, any of our small businesses, any of our self-employed individuals, any of our affiliates, because this is one of those things that I think people are either A, too overconfident with, or B, not confident enough with, and it doesn't seem like you find a lot of middle ground there. So, this will be a fun time to get some information. So
be interesting.
Yeah,
I think so. You mentioned extensions. Is there any fear anyone should have in filing an extension?
Things have been so chaotic at the IRS for the last couple of years. I don't think anybody needs to fear filing an extension. The key to remember about filing an extension is, even though you do extend the time that you have to file your return, the amount that's due is due when you file the extension. You don't get an extension on payment. You get an extension on time to file the paperwork. Let's keep that in mind. You should still have a really good idea of what your tax liability is going to be.
Okay, and you can do this every year. You don't get like one extension. You can do it every year?
You can do it every year.
Okay.
Yeah, it's good. It's not it is actually not a good thing, and not something that gets recommended to a lot of people. If you kind of get caught off guard for some reason, it can help you, or if there's a direct reason. But that kind of goes into our first kind of question for you about, why is it important to hire a CPA? When it comes to being self-employed or a business owner of any kind, for that matter.
Sure. Well, let me ask you a question. Mm-hmm. When you drive down the street and you see these houses with a sign out front that says "For Sale by Owner," what do you think?
We can't speak about that on the
Bless
podcast.
Bless their heart. Bless their heart.
Bless their heart. Well, CPAs are kind of the same way. Filing your taxes is one of those things that people think is just a normal course part of life, and of course it is. But there comes a point where if you have more than just some W-2s that you're inputting into a system, there might be some things you're missing. And we are here to help and guide you. Look at it that way. In my opinion, it is money well invested to have a CPA on your side.
I think you brought up a good point, though, because, as realtors, it is a normal process for us to almost get offended or hurt or frustrated when, especially somebody we know doesn't use us to help them with their home search or sell, but even also with even the general public. But at the same time, we can be some of the worst when it comes to hiring professional help in areas that we don't have expertise in. Right. And it's a good point to bring up that for sale by owner is an amazing analogy for this. So
there's so many nuances involved with filing your taxes, especially as an independent contractor, a realtor. Mm-hmm. What are some of the things that are commonly missed deductions that one of our members needs to think about, especially now because they're pulling all that crap out on their their dining room table.
Yes, the dining room table audit.
Yes.
Yes.
Well, one thing that I have noticed is that once realtors get established and in the business, they tend to start forming partnerships for various and sundry things. Just because you go to dinner with someone does not mean that you need to form a partnership with them. Let me caution you about partnerships. If it's a general partnership, your partner can bind you to things that you may not know about. And if your partner skips out, you're going to be stuck with the bill. So keep that in mind. As far as just your basic things to remember, one of the things I've noticed on the list of questions that you all were going to ask about was mileage. Mm-hmm. We see a lot of real estate agents trying to put things into a business. Do not put your car into business. You're much better off taking a mileage deduction, in my opinion, because even if you do try to take actual expenses, you've got to keep up with all the gas receipts. You've got to keep up with all of the car repairs. Mm-hmm. You've got to keep up with your insurance costs. You've got to keep all of that has to be available in case you're audited. But in addition to that, you've also got to keep a mileage log. You're going to have to keep it anyway, because the mileage log is going to tell what percentage of your car is used for business as opposed to what is personal.
Yeah. Could you imagine? I can't think about what I had last night for dinner. If I had to keep a mileage log, I'd be screwed. I would not be successful at day one.
Yeah, no, you'd be screwed. You said it right the first time. But that's the funny thing. I'm the same way. The only way I keep up with it is an app. I mean, literally. But I was given the same kind of advice and even then, with your vehicle, you're only getting a depreciation based on the initial value of the vehicle, correct?
Exactly.
Yeah. Yes. So the mileage, and with the federal government, right? I think last time, 56.5 cents?
For 2021, it's 56 cents.
56 cents.
For 2022, it's going to be 58.5 cents a mile.
So for when you start talking about that, and all the realtors and appraisers and anybody else know, our cars are the ones that get turned in for trade because they hit the 100,000 miles mark at 2 and 3 years. So
Exactly.
They do a lot of miles on their car.
Can you deduct your vehicle tax, the wheel tax?
No.
Oh, man. At least they got away with MARTA. We don't have to do MARTA anymore, you know?
Yeah. Well, and actually, from our day on the Hill, they are actually trying to do away with or phase out the wheel tax as far as that's concerned. So that might be kind of...
What's the catch? We need to see the fine print.
There's always fine print.
Yes.
In regard to...
You know, if you do away with the wheel tax,
Yeah, where's it going to... Yeah, where's the money going to come from?
Yes.
You know, interesting to know the wheel tax was actually instituted in Rutherford County back in 1970 or 71, I believe.
That was before my time.
Barely.
To pay
For the record, it was before my time.
before his time. But to pay for the 2 new high schools, Oakland and Riverdale.
Okay.
That's what prompted it here in Rutherford County. And now, of course, it's just a standard part of life, and it's, I don't know how much of our budget it is, but it's significant, I imagine.
I'm going to put a little bookmark into this, because through our conversation, I found out he's a native, like old school. Were you here when the Confederates left?
Well, I was probably here when the Federal Union came in.
Okay. But he was talking, a little side note. You've been around here when the county was just off the square. That was considered the county.
Well, if you know where St. Rose of Lima Church is, back when I was in elementary school, that was out in the county.
Okay. Holy cow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So it's grown exponentially. I mean, this is one of the fastest growing areas in the nation.
Mm-hmm.
Boy, what you got?
All right, so I use a service because my taxes aren't as complicated. It rhymes with Furbofax. And it's easy because for folks like me, this is not my skill set. Taxes and all of that is not my skill set, and I always think it's a trick. And thankfully, that online service has dummied it down for folks like me, and even have a little help section. So when do you cross the threshold of using a service like Furbofax and needing to come to someone like you to help prepare taxes?
You know, there are a lot of different answers to that question. I think probably the most important one is, when do you get so frustrated that you just want to throw your computer out the window?
When it logs on.
Yeah.
That's when you need to seek out a tax professional. If it gets to the point where you're thinking, well, should I put that in or should I not put that in? Does this go here? Does this go there? Yes, now they do have somebody online who can help you, but I'd rather sit down across the table from somebody than have somebody on the line. But that's just me. I'm old school. I'm not technologically as savvy as some of you younger people are. And there's a comfort, I think, in having someone to guide you. When you ask me a point-blank question, if I don't know the answer, I'll say, I'll look it up in my trusty little master tax guide, and if that doesn't do it, I'll do some research on it for you. I will find an answer, and I'll find the correct answer. They're going to give you an off-the-cuff answer that may or may not put you in the right area.
Yeah, we kind of do the same thing when we're asked for advice. There's 3 answers: yes, no, I'll find out. I never want to give someone the wrong piece of information.
Yeah.
So with FurboFax, there's kind of this scale of strength of how well your tax return will be accepted in what are the odds you'll get audited. What is it that a CPA does to protect one of their clients through an audit? Let's just say, oh great, hi Mark, I just got this letter from the IRS. What's the difference? Is an online service going to give you the same kind of peace of mind? Or is this when a professional really is like, okay, let's look through this, I can handle it?
Well, another piece of information, Steve, that you probably don't know is I used to work for the Internal Revenue Service. So
I love the IRS.
That being said,
Christopher Wilson.
I would say that your online service is going to give you limited protection. Whereas if you go to your CPA, yes, if you get audited, we've got documentation in our files for what you've given us. We're going to charge you for taking the time to represent you before the Internal Revenue Service. But you can sign a power of attorney. We will take the whole thing off your plate. You come to me, you say, Mark, this is what I got. I'll say, sign here. I'll go before the IRS as your representative and defend your return.
What's that like? Do you have to wear a blue suit and carry a briefcase like X-Files? I mean, or is it, you have to do a little song and dance? They're really nice people, trust me.
It just depends on the IRS agent that you get. Most of the agents with whom I have dealt since I left the service have been very professional and very reasonable. They are out there to simply make sure the return is substantially correct. They're not going to audit it down to the penny. They can't. They don't have the time.
I think it's one of our fears a lot of times is that's what they're going to do, and that gets excessively difficult when you're trying to keep track of all those receipts and everything like that. So,
as long as you can provide substantial documentation for what is in your return, you're good to go.
Would you recommend that folks get into the investment business? We're in the business, in the realtor world, to help folks buy and sell property, create generational wealth. A lot of our members do the same thing, taking their own medicine. Do you recommend that be a good place to really get some deductions on your taxes, is have investment property?
Well, the difference in being a real estate professional and just being, say, a lawyer, is that if you get into rental real estate, you can take any losses that come along the way, you can take those. For other people, they are passive losses, and they can only be taken against passive income. So, for example, if you have excess passive losses and you're a lawyer, you can't deduct that anywhere on your tax return. On the other hand, if you're a real estate professional and you have rental income and some passive losses, technically, you can deduct those on your return.
Okay.
So getting into some areas of rental real estate are probably a good idea for real estate professionals, especially in this market.
Christopher's getting ready to go on a great trip to Puerto Rico, and sorry for sharing your personal information, but could he take that trip and find some ways to talk business, to deduct that from his taxes?
Are you going to be looking at real estate property and
we're being recorded here, so.
And the genesis of my question is, realtors have the opportunity to go to conferences and conventions and attend events, and some of them are in Puerto Rico. How does that handle? I mean, is that going to trigger an audit, or is that just smart business to say, hey, I actually did do some business while I was out there?
If you are going for a valid business purpose, then yes, it's deductible. If you go to Puerto Rico when you're on your honeymoon or a vacation, that's going to be hard to justify. But on the other hand, if you and your lovely new bride go and look at rental property and you are actually seriously looking at property with the intention of perhaps purchasing it, that can be a valid business deduction.
That's why you need a CPA.
That also goes back into the investment side of things. So when you have a history of investment properties and investment work, that's going to be an easier idea to have happen than otherwise.
Yes, do not bring me, if you have gone to Disney World with your family and you're trying to write off as a business expense, that would be hard for me to defend as your power of attorney.
Have you seen how much Disney World charges? I mean, I'll look for a rental property there. So.
If you can get one at Disney World, then you're a millionaire.
Yeah, that's what we're saying. So I use a CPA. I am a big proponent of it. I even teach some of my younger agents to get them before you even think you need one. One of the mistakes I made was not knowing when to make that jump, and I did get caught off guard the first year I had a substantial earning in real estate. And when you're used to W-2 income most of your life, and then you end up as a 1099 person and no one's there to necessarily teach you what to keep track of and things like that. So I do think the CPA concept is very valuable. One of the other things that I don't hear a lot of people talk about, but at least in my experience has been beneficial, maybe you can speak on this a little bit, is actually like tax planning with your CPA.
Yes.
So like my CPA and I, we sit down at the end of the year to plan for the next year. What are some things that happened this year that we can help mitigate next year? Is that something that you recommend? Can you speak a little bit on that?
Anytime you are self-employed, you need to be doing some tax planning along the way. There are some things that are going to happen each year that you can be totally unprepared for. But on the other hand, you need to be aware that your business is going to be growing, it's going to be changing, it's never static. Your tax professional can walk with you along that way. And don't make it necessarily a once a year meeting. I mean, your tax guy should be your best friend. There are things that the one thing I tell all of my tax clients is you never lie to your doctor, you never lie to your lawyer, and you never lie to your tax guy.
I lie to my doctor. They're like,
I eat 3 salads a day.
do you drink alcohol? No.
Only under duress, which is every day.
Yeah, when I'm forced to. One of the big ones that I see most self-employed people go after, and once again, not being a CPA by any stretch of the imagination, I've heard can be a major pitfall, is this idea of a home office.
Oh Lord, the home office.
Speak about the home office.
Oh, the home office, yes. Okay, home offices used to be a lot easier to get by with than they are now. Mm-hmm. Right now, if you want a home office, you can have a home office, but it has to be completely dedicated to your business. If you have your kids in there watching TV, it is not a home office. If you have, let's say your computer's in there and you're playing games on your computer, that's not home office. Have someplace else where you do that type of thing. As long as you have a space that is completely dedicated to your business, you can take the home office deduction.
How do you prove that?
Well, that's one of those things where if you tell me that's what you're doing, then I'm going to accept that.
Okay.
But then when the IRS shows up, if there's anything in there that doesn't belong there, you need to be sure it is not in there when the IRS agent visits. And they will visit.
That's what I've heard. I've heard they've actually done home visits and people have gotten dinged for having like a stroller parked in there.
Yes.
And things like that, which blows my mind because when you think about it, even I've seen, moms or dads even bring strollers into their business office, and so it's kind of, I think they've gotten a little silly with it, but probably because they were trying to lock it down from people abusing it.
There was so much abuse back 20 years ago that yes, that's why. And they have tightened up the rules. And it makes sense to me. I mean, the other aspect of this is you are deducting a portion of your home. So when you sell your home, remember that's something that's going to come back to that you have to calculate into your sale. So keep that in mind as well.
And most of the time it's 10%, correct? Is that kind of the magic number when you're doing for the other home stuff? Or the percentage of square footage of the office versus the home?
I prefer to do square footage.
Square footage.
That way you can get the most accurate assessment of how much you're paying for utilities, how much you're paying for your lawn care, how much you're paying for upkeep and maintenance. It's an easier allocation to justify.
So a lot of times it's not even necessarily a significant amount of money for the risk. If you think there's any kind of real risk there, or you're not going to fit that qualification, it may not be the safest.
Usually not.
It's not going to benefit you so greatly that it's worth,
Well, the other aspect of it is if you have an office somewhere that you're paying for outside of your home, then you have to justify having a home office. I mean, if you've got an office 2 miles down the road and you're saying, I'm taking this deduction for a home office deduction, why do you need a home office?
I wonder how COVID's going to affect all that.
Now, COVID will really
make it more lenient for at least those couple years?
I wouldn't say lenient. I'd say they're less likely to be audited during those years because so many people were confined to their homes and were not going out. That is still the way for a certain extent. So and here again, you're talking about the Internal Revenue Service, and they are several years behind and they are so backed up. Anything that you've done the last year or so is probably audit free, but I wouldn't push my luck.
Yeah. Well, there's one group I don't tend to play with too much. So
Yeah. No, and you've done a really good job answering that question, even for someone simple-minded as me. And it's hard to start arguing hypotheticals, but I mean, you've kind of laid it out well for us. Teams are a big part of our industry now. So Christopher works on a team. Does he need to think about 1099s for the folks that are on his team? How does that work when you start bringing on ancillary staff? Maybe a receptionist or a coordinator, a contract coordinator.
Well, then you get into, are they really contractors or are they actually employees? Are you directing their time? Are you telling them what time they have to be certain places? Are you telling them what they have to do? You've got to look at all those factors whether you decide whether they're employees or contractors.
Okay.
If they have more free will in the marketplace, then they're more contractors. If it's a receptionist and she has to be there from 8 to 5, probably a W-2 employee.
that's typically where they go. It's if you dictate their time or have control over their time period or have edicts, so to speak, of what they have to do.
If you have policies, they're employees.
I'm an employee of Christopher.
Oh,
No,
he has lots of policies, huh?
Lots of policies. Okay, so here's another one. This is a newer one for Tennessee. Now, I was licensed in another state, and they allowed for PLLCs for realtors. Tennessee has just now started to allow for a realtor to run their business through an LLC as a single member LLC. What are your kind of thoughts behind that? Are you recommending it, not recommending it? Are you familiar with it?
I'm not that familiar with it. I know that we do have some, in my firm with whom I'm working, we do have some LLCs who are real estate agents. One thing you've got to remember is setting up an LLC does not necessarily provide you any protection. It just gives you a different form of business structure. If you want to form an LLC, then we'll be more than happy to help you. And then too, I think it has a lot to do with how many people are involved in this. If you're a young real estate professional starting out, stay with Schedule C for right now. As you evolve and expand and you have more properties and more people that you're touching, then you may want to get into the LLC situation.
Touch on that a little bit more, because you actually said something that I think is a misnomer for a lot of people. A lot of people believe that I'm going to start an LLC for protection. And it's even one that's espoused a little bit differently. So for example, in the previous state they said that they would allow you a PLLC because they didn't want you to have any additional protection if a lawsuit came about for malpractice or anything like that.
Right.
But so what is the actual protections or lack thereof with an LLC, specifically a single member, which would effectively be a pass-through?
Well, I think the single member LLC gives the real estate professional themselves control of that company. Whereas if you are a married individual and you're a real estate professional and it's a Schedule C, your spouse is responsible for half. So it's kind of a protection for your spouse, but not for you.
Gotcha.
Look at it that way.
So then form the LLC, put everything in your spouse's name. No.
Leave them holding back.
I mean,
I love you, Cassandra.
You got some making up to do.
they'll have a lot of explaining to do.
Yeah.
Lucy?
Have we forgotten anything that a member that's listening to this should take away? What's burning on your heart?
Well, the one thing that is burning on my heart is the fact that real estate in Murfreesboro is sky high right now. But the other,
Yes.
the other thing that I would encourage real estate professionals to do is you are in the community, you're working with the community, give back to your community. Charitable donations are always a good, effective way to build good relationships with your clients, and it makes you a class act, in my opinion.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I
like
like
it.
that. I like that.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, speaking of class acts, you are a class act. You even serve on the Housing Authority board here in Murfreesboro.
I do. I'm also on the Rutherford County Library Foundation Board, and we are doing a fundraiser in May. So if any real estate professionals would like some way to donate some money to a really good cause, the Rutherford County Library System is one of 3 systems in the state that has a bookmobile, and our bookmobile has died.
Oh man.
And those suckers are expensive. So we're doing a fundraiser this May.
It's time for y'all to turn another page.
Yes. Well, it's time for us to get something that's not a 1970s school bus. So
Isn't there a mobile that has a worm on it? Am I thinking of that? It's got a big green worm.
They usually have the different like murals and stuff on it. I don't know if it's Rutherford counties that did that or one of the charity events that we support. I think it's the Dolly Parton
Imagination
Library, yeah, that we had done in the past. They have kind of a bookmobile that they were giving away books to kids at some of those events and stuff like that. So
Dolly has done great work in that regard. She has given you may sign your baby up at birth and they get a book a month until the age of 5, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
That's amazing.
It is amazing. I can't believe that she has been that generous.
There's so much connection you can make with a small one when you're reading to them.
Yes.
And it almost takes you back to when you were that age. I enjoyed, before COVID, I would go to a friend of mine that I went to Lipscomb with. She teaches here in the Rutherford County school system, and they would have the read to a class day. And I love that because the kids get an outside person and you're going back into the classroom and you're reading, and it's great. It's a great cause.
Yes, it is. All 3 of my daughters are teachers, and I have been to the classrooms and read to the kids. The problem is we also have grandchildren who are preschool age, and once this kid gets one book in his mind, that's all he wants.
the only book.
The only book he can read. I don't want that one, Papa. I want this other one. Can't we just change? No.
And they'll memorize it too. They'll memorize it. They'll quote unquote read it to you as they've memorized it. So.
No, Clifford did not say it.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that we want to do, you being our first guest, so you get to be the guinea pig on this one, is
great.
as we're wrapping some of these up, we're going to ask kind of 3 random questions. This time they're probably not going to be so random because you've triggered them by a few things that you've said.
Okay.
So the first one I'd like to ask you is, what are, give a couple books that you have had throughout your life that have had a significant impact on you that you would recommend to the people listening and watching to look into?
Well, let me preface this by saying that I don't read for self-actualization or for...
We went Maslow.
I know.
We went Maslow.
We'll have a definition section at the end of the segment so you guys can know what those words mean.
I read for entertainment purposes only.
Perfect.
Like Mad Magazine?
Well, I used to read Mad Magazine. That was one of my favorites when I was a teenager. Actually, the books that have that really strike me as some of the funniest I've ever read were Janet Ivanovich's murder mysteries. They're numbered 1 to, I think she's up to number 26.
Oh.
They are absolutely hysterical. I do not laugh out loud when I read, but my family always knows I'm reading one of those because I will laugh out loud. Her descriptions are just, you can just see the pictures in your mind of what she's describing. So if you need an escape, read any book by Janet Ivanovich.
And that's a great thing. A lot of times we end up talking about, self-development, personal development, business development. But the truth is, an escape, catharticism is a big part of needing a break. And we all need that thing that does let our mind rest from what we're doing on a day-to-day basis. So,
Yes.
So yeah. The other one, the next one I'll hit you with is, Steve actually got me on this one. What is it that gets you excited in the morning? Like when you're getting up, what is it that drives you, that gets you out of bed, gets you going, gets you excited to do or accomplish throughout the day?
He made it sound like I'm a pusher.
Yeah.
Try this.
Well,
Try this.
Well,
the shoe fits.
Yeah. Well, I think it's just, I spent so many years in state government and with the federal government, with the Internal Revenue Service, and there's a certain amount of drudgery with that. And now it's just a matter of, I'm semi-retired, I get up, I do what I want to do. I enjoy every day. It's a matter of, well, I want to do this, but they're having a meeting and I don't want to go to that, so I'm not going. And,
Candy, Steve's going to semi-retire now.
That's what makes life worth living to me, is being able to pick and choose exactly what I want to do. I don't have to do things I don't want to do anymore.
I'm so glad you chose this one.
Yeah.
Yes, we do appreciate it.
I like you, Steve.
Oh, he said it. It's on film.
There you go. All right, one last one for you.
Yes.
If you could have a billboard anywhere that could say anything you wanted, and you were going to put a message out there to people, what would you put on there?
My message would be, it is never too late to have a happy childhood.
I love it.
Oh, that's great.
Absolutely love that. Yes, absolutely love that.
Trust me, my childhood was not your beaver cleaver upbringing, but by Jiminy, I have enjoyed myself ever since. Doing things. I mean, I was probably the only 40-year-old that tried rollerblading.
Oh.
That's awesome, though.
Yeah.
That is.
I'm always up to try something new. Now, once you get to my age, it's kind of like, if I break something, how long is it going to take me to get over it?
Yes. Have I met my deductible this year?
Yeah, am I going to be in traction? Is Medicare going to cover this?
Love it. Well, thank you very much. I truly enjoyed it, and I appreciate you being our first guest on the podcast and allowing us to kind of pick your brain a little bit about some things that are important for realtors to know about. So thank you.
Glad to do it.
I do. I appreciate it. And if anybody needs more information, how do they get a hold of you?
Okay, I'm currently working with a firm called the MG Group in Tullahoma. The telephone number there is 931-393-3307.
I appreciate it so much.
Yes.
Glad to do it.
Thank you.
Hope I can be of service to some people somewhere.
I'm sure you will. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Tenets in Common. Find out more about the association and upcoming events at www.mtar.org and follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at MidTN Realtors. Duplication or publication of this podcast is strictly prohibited without the written consent of the Middle Tennessee Association of Realtors. Until next time.